Hey everybody, it's Irene with BrainStorm Acres. And today I'm going to talk to you about an unusual subject. Now, we watch YouTube. We have our favorite channels that we watch all over the US, plus in foreign countries. And one of the things that always makes me cringe is bare feet. Now, it's not because I'm prissy about such things. It's not because I'm afraid of dirt. We live in dirt. It's Arizona. But it's because only under the most extreme emergency circumstances would we ever consider going barefoot where we live. People, when they think of places like Arizona, probably think of things like cactus. And while there are parts of Arizona that have a lot of cactus, cactus are not actually that common here because we're in a colder area. We're high altitude. So it freezes here. I mean, for real freezes. Like, it's a very rare year that doesn't get down to 0 degrees Fahrenheit. So, not Celsius, Fahrenheit. So, we get real frozen ground and everything here. And a lot of the cactus really don't care for that. So, the majority of the pictures you see of Arizona with lots of things like saguaro cactus and stuff like that, that's much farther south than we are. But what people don't think about is the other things that are here. All the little prickly weeds and stickers and just amazing. And they don't think about shoes. So yesterday I was wearing a set of shoes similar to these. These are actually Henry's. These are his go-to-town shoes. I bought those for him relatively recently, and he loves them. And they're super comfy for summertime because they have these mesh sections here which breathe really well. Does he wear them around here? No. And I'll tell you why. Because as I was sitting there yesterday with my shoes, which are similar, picking out the stickers that had gone through all of the mesh in the shoes. You know, I was just wearing them in the yard. I wasn't wearing them out, you know, through the brush somewhere. But we were clearing a flower bed, and there's foxtails. There's other kinds of grass seeds. There's an assortment of prickly, stickly things in there, and they will go right through this sort of stuff. So if you're planning to go for a hike somewhere, say you're on vacation and you're planning to go for a hike, it's a good thing if you have a good clue as to what's on the ground. In other words, we've gone to lots of places where basically you're walking on a trail. It's cleared, it gives you enough space so that you can avoid weeds. In Arizona, it's also good enough, it's also better if it's wide enough so that you can see a snake. We set up our paths here. A couple of people have commented that they noticed that we had specific colors for the paths and stuff like that. It's so that we can see contrast. If there's something that looks like a stick or a piece of hose on that gravel pathway, I'm going to spot it right away, and I'm going to make sure I know what it is for real. We do get snakes here on a regular basis, and especially in the summertime. In the wintertime, they are sleeping, which is a good thing. But the minute we see the lizards in the spring, we know that we have to start paying attention looking for snakes. So if I was going hiking, these are actually a pair of my old hiking shoes. And they have some sections up here that have like a breathable thing to them. But the edges here are all covered with leather, And of course, there's some decorative bits here too. But that's enough that 90% of the time, that's going to keep any kind of stickers, unless I'm really, really careless, from getting through to my feet. Because the only way you can get the stuff out of your feet is to sit down somewhere, and you have to find someplace to sit down where you're not going to get something in your behind when you sit down on it, and then take the shoe off, get anything that's stuck in your sock or in your foot out, and then work on the shoe. And it's sometimes quite difficult to get these prickly things out of your shoes. The majority of people around here wear a leather boot. Now this boot does have some air here, but the majority of this is just leather. That's for a reason. It's not a fashion choice. It's a practical choice. Flip-flops. Do I ever wear flip-flops? Yes, I wear flip-flops in my yard when the place is not ripped up and the flagstone pavers are not ripped up. And yeah, I love to go outside in flip-flops, get a little sun on my toes, nice and cool, great stuff. Do I ever go out in slippers? Yes, my old LL Bean slippers. These have a significant rubber sole with a double wrap of leather up part of the way here. Does anything ever get me? Yeah, sometimes the grass seeds and stuff like that will actually get into the, like there's one right now. There's a foxtail, whoop, right there. There's two of them that I picked up when I ran out this morning. So I will occasionally get them in, but this part of the foot is protected. What usually happens is something comes in over the top because they're not high enough. If I'm buying shoes here to work around, it's probably something like this. These old, these are what do they call these? Doc Martens. These are Henry's old Doc Martens. They're perfect. They're all leather. Is there anything that can get through them? Yes, I guarantee there are. I have seen cactus spines and some of the other really spiny things that are not as common here. Some of the thistle plants have really long spines. Actually get in through the holes where the thread goes through. But that's not super common. That's one of those once in a couple of months things, wearing them every day. I have a pair very similar to this that I'm wearing right now, as a matter of fact, different brand. These are actually less expensive models. They're not leather. They just make them look like leather. They're actually plastic. But that's enough to keep 90% of the stickers out. They will make your feet sweat, and this is the only part where you have ventilation. So you need to think about that. But yeah, I was watching somebody yesterday, I guess it was, and their kids were helping them, and the kids were barefoot. Now, in the part of the United States they live in, because I've lived there before, is there any reason why you shouldn't go barefoot other than snakes? Yeah, fungus, roundworm. I mean, there's various kinds of fungal infections you can get, but honestly, for healthy people, it's really not that usually a big deal, unless you've had a particularly wet season. But yeah, most places in the United States, it's a matter of, do you like to get your feet dirty? I tell you what, I love really soft, cushy, cool grass on my feet. And when we work at events with my shop, we have down a canvas floor in the tent where we have the shop. And if it's really hot, I will, most places, once in a while we can't do this because there's actually stickers that will come through the bottom canvas. But in a normal situation, I will take my shoes or my sandals off and I will go barefoot on the floor, because having your feet on a cool floor really helps to drop your body temperature and makes it a much more tolerable situation. But I do not do it at home except in the house. And I only do it in the house if we vacuumed recently, because it's easy enough when you have lugs on the bottom of your shoes or even on the bottoms of your sneakers to have the spikes. We probably have a picture. I'll have to see if Henry has a picture of goat heads. If not, we'll find them. They are a common plague in Arizona and New Mexico, probably some of the other surrounding states too. I haven't noticed them in the other states, but I haven't spent that much time in them, especially not looking for things that would stick me in the toes. But they are spines in all directions, and they will wedge into the bottom of your shoe, and then you'll bring them inside, and they'll knock off on a rug or something like that, and the next thing you know, you've come through barefoot and you've stepped on them. Usually when I get up in the middle of the night, if I have to go to the bathroom or there's a sound or whatever, something has to go, I have a pair of slippers right next to the bed that I slide into, and that's actually for two reasons. One is not stepping on a stone or a sticker or something like that. The other is historically, if I'm going to find something yucky on the floor, and by yucky I don't mean a cat or a dog has had an accident, I mean yucky as in this is an insect that needs to be squashed now, I will always find it when I am barefoot. So I think of this as a protective magic. If I wear slippers, then there's not likely to be anything on the floor that I need to squash between the bedroom and the other end of the house where the bathroom is. So whether I'm going to get a drink of water or let a dog out to take a leak or whatever the problem is, we had a problem, I want to say, geez, it's been several years now. 6 years ago, maybe? All of a sudden, now centipedes in Arizona can get huge. They can get as big around as your finger and 6-8 inches long. Just disgusting. I'm sorry, I have trouble with bugs that large. I'm pretty tolerant, but when they get that big, ugh. And I would be walking through here at 2 a.m. to go get a drink of water, and there's one on the floor. I'm certainly not going to step on him barefoot because they can bite. Now, they are poisonous, but they're not any more poisonous than a bee is or something. So unless you happen to be sensitive to them, and outside, I normally just totally leave them alone. There was a fairly large one, only about 3 inches yesterday when we were moving some rocks, and I kind of went, blah, and then he went, what? I went, that was a centipede. He's like, oh, okay, that was a centipede, blah. I mean, it's like, I just don't like them. They're kind of creepy. But outside, great. Once in a rare while, we'll get them in the house. And as I mentioned, about 6 years ago, we were having trouble with them showing up in the dining room, and I could not figure out how they were getting in here. And then we realized there was a piece of weather stripping missing on the back door. And as soon as we fixed that, no more. Once in a while, they still will get in through the kitchen door because the dog and cat can take forever sometimes to come in or out. And unless you're standing there glaring at all 4 edges of the door, it's possible that something can come in when you open a door. It's just part of the deal. We don't usually get any giant ones in that way, but sometimes they can be still a little on the scary side. I just wear something on my feet. Now, I love to be barefoot, and sometimes when I sit down to watch TV or something like that, I will take off my shoes and stick them on the floor. We have a stone floor in here over a heavy, extra thick cement slab that is designed to help keep it cool in the summertime and help retain heat in the wintertime because we're passive solar. So in the wintertime, the sun comes in, the windows on the south side of the house, heats the floor, and then it radiates back. So I have thermal drapes on the windows, and in the summer we close them to keep the heat out because we have double windows, but still the drapes do an extra good job. But in the wintertime, we can have them completely open, the sun's beaming in. Sometimes spring and fall, you actually have to close them a little bit. It can make the house too warm. But it allows us to adjust the temperature of the building with extremely small quantities of input from a pellet stove. We actually really very rarely heat this house. It's just, now we grew up in a colder climate, so we don't like a hot house. This house does not get to be 72 degrees in the wintertime. That's fine with me. I don't like a 72-degree house particularly. One of my girlfriend's moms had polio when I was a kid, and they kept a very warm house. And I loved to visit her, but man, I hated her house. It was so hot. It was so hot. Anyway, back to feet. Think about feet. Think about foot protection, and make sure you have soles that suit what you're doing. You know, like I say, these are Henry's go-to-town shoes. He wears these when we jump into the car and go somewhere where it's, you know, paved or grassy or something like that, but he doesn't have to worry about stickers particular. I have a pair, same color as a matter of fact, that I love to wear. They're super comfy, but I know that if I wear them around here and it's not in a very controlled environment, I will have to stop at some point and get the stickers out of my feet because it hurts. So it's just sort of a weird sidebar. You don't think about that sort of thing much. Usually, you know, when we lived on the East Coast or the West Coast, now West Coast, we did a lot of hiking. So, you know, but that was usually you're in a park. The paths are fairly wide. Even if they're a rough path, they don't normally have brambles or anything else that's going to stick you in the toes. I have been to sites that were used for events where we really had to be careful because they had star thistle there, which is nasty, nasty, nasty. It literally has spikes that long on it. And every flower head has like, I don't know, five spikes that size? That sounds about right. And just, you have to be careful. They will ruin your shoes. I actually spent time after that event with a pair of pliers pulling all the stickers out of my shoes because, well, I was full of stickers. But most of the time, you don't think about that. You know, you throw on a pair of shoes based on what are you going to be doing? Are you going to be looking lovely sitting someplace in a cafe and you just want to look very fashionable? Or are you going to be stomping around at a park somewhere and you want your feet to not hurt? Or you want this to match your dress or your pants or whatever it is. But when you're out here, you need to think seriously. Now, I do see there's sections of our area, what they call the ranch, where there is no vegetation. I mean, no vegetation. It's like, it's been overgrazed, it's bare dirt, and then there might be a tree or two. That's it. So I suppose in those areas you might be able to get away with pretty much anything except barefoot. That's just too insane. But because there's bugs out here that'll bite you too. You have velvet ants, which are actually a wingless wasp, and we do not have fire ants up here, thank God. But down south in Arizona we have fire ants. There's also all kinds of other biting things that you just don't want to get into. We don't usually have scorpions up here. We only see them usually about twice a year. But that's enough for me. I'm good with that. We do get some pretty significant spiders. We get black widows. We get tarantulas. But tarantulas are not an issue. They're big fuzzy spiders. They can kind of creep you out sometimes. But they're not dangerous unless you happen to be allergic to them. And you had to have annoyed them in order for them to bite you because they're not naturally aggressive. But there's just so many reasons not to go barefoot here. And it's frustrating because, like I say, I'm a barefoot kind of person. I just love being barefoot. But the first time you ever get a goat head crammed into your foot real hard, one of our most horrible weeds here is actually solanum, which is in the nightshade family. It has a gorgeous purple flower. I'll see if Henry has I think he has a flower picture that I took. We try and keep a kind of a encyclopedia of such things around here. Gorgeous flowers. I have been known to allow them to actually bloom simply because I like the flowers so much, but then I never let them go to seed because the stems on them are completely covered with spines, and they are a very brittle spine. They can be as long as, not usually longer than 1/4 of an inch, but very frequently between an 1/8 and a 1/4 of an inch long. They are a pale pink, which means when you get it in your skin, you really can't see it very well. It just hurts. And the usual technique, and this sounds gross, but the usual technique is to let it get infected and then you can get it out. So it's a real problem. You really don't want them. When I first was here and we were still working on the yard and I used to wear flip-flops a lot more, I got them in the side of my foot on multiple occasions and went through weeks of discomfort because every time you walked a certain way, it would stick you again inside your skin. And those nerve endings were screaming at you. So we just learned not to do that. Now, I know that farther south of us, there are also sections that are pretty well cleared out. They don't have much in the way of underbrush. There are some yards and stuff that I have seen that are pretty clear. So the people there are comfortable with wearing flip-flops and stuff like that. I would not recommend they do that if they come up here, because we have too much ground growth here. And right now it is starting to brown off. The native grasses and the invasive grasses that came in from Europe and stuff like that are pretty much drying out, which means they're now prickly. And you wind up with stickers on your feet, and that's really not my idea of a good time. So I thought I'd share this weird little bit. I was thinking about it yesterday when I was sitting there pulling the spines out of my shoes, that this is something that people in other parts of the United States sometimes don't think about. And if you're thinking about homesteading in an area, this is actually a really important thing to look at. You know, take a look at people around the area. What do they wear on their feet? If I go to town, what will I see? I will see solid sneakers sort of things, not canvas ones, but the solid leather ones or plastic ones. I'll see leather boots. I'll see cowboy boots. I'll see engineer's boots. You see the occasional person pop into the post office in flip-flops or something like that. But unless they're in a very controlled environment, most people wear something around here that covers their feet pretty well. And it's for a reason. It's not a fashion statement or a lack thereof. It's a I don't want stickers on my feet statement. And that's an important consideration. You know, when we travel, we always have a pair of rubber muck boots with us in case the area that we wind up in is muddy. We've been at events in Mississippi before where we literally had water flowing through the floor of the tent. I mean, like an inch of it just rolling downhill through our tent. We had everything up off the floor because we know how to do that, or in plastic boxes. And we stood in water for a day while it rained the whole time. But we had rubber boots, so it was okay. Your feet get a little sweaty. We've been in events here where we had flooding a couple of years ago, 3 years ago now, I guess. And yeah, we were okay because we had rubber boots, but we had the rubber boots. So it's just a matter of, you know, learning what you need to have. Don't assume that if you're a barefoot kind of gal and you want to be barefoot all the time, you may not want to move to parts of California, parts of Nevada, parts of Arizona. You know, I mean, you need to look honestly at what's there because it'll spoil your fun tremendously. Now, I'll be the first one to say that if I go to Hawaii or someplace like that, I'm in sandals and barefoot most of the time. But there's places there I wouldn't go sandals or barefoot either because I like climbing in some of the volcanic areas, and you have to wear shoes there that can tolerate the volcanic rock. Same thing when I visited Iceland. The volcanic rock is like 40 grit sandpaper. It just eats your shoes. So you have to be prepared for the fact that when I was in Iceland, I did buy a pair of new boots while I was there because I had literally worn my boots out hiking around town and stuff like that. And I wasn't really so much on lava rock there, but I was just wearing them out. So it's one of those things you just need to kind of tune into because having uncomfortable feet is a really bad thing and it makes it really hard to work. So I've jabbered on long enough now, but just something for people to think about. If they're thinking about homesteading, find out why people wear what they wear on their feet where you're going to homestead. You know, some places you'll see people wearing all boots because they're really concerned about snakes and things like that, or other biting insects. We lived in Texas for a while. Fire ants were a huge problem there. Learn what your pests are, learn what your prickly things are, what your biting things are. It'll make your life a lot more comfortable. Until next time, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell because we're going to be doing lots more stuff. I have a ton of seedlings still left in the greenhouse. We got a ton done on one of the beds this morning. We're hoping that once the temperature drops a little bit, about another hour and a half, we'll get back out and we'll work on that, getting that bed armored so that we can get more stuff out of the greenhouse. It's too hot in the greenhouse now for a lot of things. I can keep them alive, but they're not really happy. So I want them out in the yard where it's just as hot. But we're going to see what we can do to make them a little healthier and happier. So until next time, bye.